Good evening, everyone. I, on behalf of Delhi High Court Legal Service Committee, extend a gracious welcome to our esteemed dignitaries and guests and all empanelled advocates of Delhi High Court Legal Services Committee. It is an honor for DHCLSC to host you all here today. As the hush descends and the inquisitiveness for this event increases in the hearts and minds of the audience, let me take this opportunity to officially begin with this event today. Delhi High Court Legal Service Committee is committed to provide free and competent legal aid to all the weaker sections of the society. And it is due to the ardent efforts of our empanelled advocates that so far we have been successfully able to make justice accessible to all the marginalized sections of the society. Competency provides the canvas for skills to shine and to unravel the skill of fact submission and tell how imperative and beautiful the art of storytelling is. We have with us today our guest of honor, Captain Raghu Raman, a TEDx speaker, ex-army official, and an author. A huge round of applause for Mr. Raghu Raman, please. I would request Mr. Arul Varma to kindly present a potted plant and a memento to Captain Raghu Raman as a token of gratitude. Thank you so much, sir. Introducing Captain Raghu Raman defies mere words. Mr. Raman has a unique career profile. He has operated in distinctively different environments of leadership. The authoritarian style within the armed forces, an incentive-driven, predominant in corporates, and the procedure-driven, bureaucratic style in the government. He is indeed an all-rounder. Captain Raman has a strong presence on platforms like TEDx, Josh, Hindustan Times, Mint, People Matters, and Indian Express, to name a few. His talks have been watched over 40 million times and used in several leadership forums as case studies. Mr. Raman has also authored a book named Every Man's War, and at present, he is a leadership advisor to the Adani Group and also anchors a leadership talk on NDTV called Wisdom of Leaders. I would now request Mr. Arul Varma, Additional District and Session Judge and Secretary, DHCLSC, to kindly deliver a welcome address honoring Captain Raghu Raman's presence here today with us. Over to you, sir.
Hello. Good evening, everyone. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. A very warm welcome to all of you. Thank you. As you all are aware, and as was discussed a couple of days ago, we have initiated certain programs to augment or enhance what we call is your professional quotient, your emotional quotient, and your sports or physical quotient. So today is a day we'll be discussing about the emotional quotient by inviting Captain Raghu Raman. So we all know the difference between EQ and IQ. So EQ, as you all are aware, is the ability to understand and to manage your emotions, whereas IQ is that ability to think, to solve problems. Now there are a plethora of studies which make it abundantly explicit that it is your EQ and not your IQ which is a single or sole determinative factor of your success or failure. And what does EQ basically do? It helps you become a better communicator, a better advocate. You can read body language of your clients. You can foster deep relationships. It helps in client-attorney, building client-attorney relationships. It breeds client loyalty. And in fact, surprisingly, even your referral rates might even go up. And it basically helps you manage your ups and downs in life. So EQ is very essential. And as far as EQ is concerned, lawyers are supposed to have great or high level of EQ, and those lawyers who have a high level of EQ are excellent storytellers. Now, by storytelling, I don't mean that you spin yarns and just to regale an audience, but to actually, lay down the truth bare as the facts exist in a persuasive or in a compelling manner. So, storytelling is basically how you build a narrative and how you engage with the court, how you influence the judge or the clients, and how you inspire and how you teach. Now, in fact, the President of the United States, one ex-President of the United States, he had said, whoever tells the best story wins. Now, how do you tell that best story? For that, we have with us, a dynamic personality. He's a fireball. He's a veteran. He's an officer. He's a former officer of our very own indomitable Indian Army, and he's lived by the motto that come hell or high water, if a task is given to me, I will accomplish it. I will not rest until my mission or objective is attained. And at his call, men would lay down their lives without hesitation and would take lives as well. So I request all of you to please welcome Captain Raghu Raman with a thunderous applause and a standing ovation, please. Please.
Please, please.
Please.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. So I remember when we got commissioned, our instructor told us, we are called gentlemen cadets in the army. I don't know if you remember that, some of you might know. How many army brats here? I know there's one, but any other army brat here? Yeah, I see a few. So when cadets are, you army brat as well? Wow, which unit? Which arm? Artillery. You are a Devlali girl. Agni? From Devlali. So, grew up in Devlali, some parts of her years at least. That's because the artillery center is in Devlali. When we were in the academy, our instructor used to tell us that you are called gentlemen cadets, and there is nobody else in this country who is called a gentleman by the decree of the parliament, because it's by the decree of the parliament that they are called gentlemen cadets. So I've been introduced many times before in many sessions, but this is the first time a judge has given a judgment that he is a good man. So I think I'll value this introduction more than the introductions that I've had in the past. Can I have the presentation here? Okay. And you have a slide advancer? There you are. Perfect. Nice image, huh? Yes? It's DALI, by the way, ChatGPT. So those of you who want to recreate some scenarios or whatever, it's as easy to do as that in ChatGPT. It looks like a very fascinatingly, painstakingly made slide, but it's done by ChatGPT. The reason why I put this here, this image, is that we all know that human beings are the most intelligent animals in the animal kingdom, and that's why we kind of rule the planet, and you rule the people who rule the planet. But the one difference that human beings have more than any other mammals can also think, they have emotions, they use tools, they have knowledge, they do a lot of things. Chimps have been known to use tools, crows use tools. The one thing that differentiates human beings, however, is their ability to take the knowledge of one generation and carry forward to the next generation. And that is why the next generation is much better knowledgeable, much better equipped than the generation before. And I think your profession embodies it, where every judgment often quotes the judgments given in the past. So there is knowledge of the past that is being brought to the future. And this distinction is the one that separates us from chimpanzees, orangutans, other primates. Because they cannot ensure that every next generation of theirs becomes better and better and better. So storytelling is actually not just about kahani suna raha hai. It's not he's narrating a story. Storytelling is packaging the knowledge, the experience, the mistakes, the traumas that has happened in one person's life and radiate it into the ecosystem through the form of stories. And why should it be the form of stories? We'll talk about it. But before we do that, I want to do a small test with you if you're okay with it. Can I do that with you? A small test? Yeah? Okay, what I want to do is, it's a very simple test. It's a test of counting, as simple as counting. I'm going to show you a video. The video is all of about 20 seconds long. And the video has a bunch of 6 kids. Young college kids. 3 kids are dressed in, I'll show it to you. 3 kids are dressed in a white t-shirt, and 3 kids, as you can see, are dressed in a black t-shirt. Now both these groups of kids are carrying a basketball with them. And they will start passing the basketball between each other. The kids wearing the white t-shirt will pass the ball only to kids wearing the white t-shirt. And kids wearing the black t-shirt will pass the ball only to kids wearing the black t-shirt. Are you with me so far? Yes? All you have to do is to count the number of times the kids wearing the white t-shirt are passing the ball to each other. And what is a pass of a ball? If I throw the ball and you catch it, that is one pass. If I throw the ball on the ground, it bounces and you catch it, that is also one pass. Are you with me so far? Now you can take a piece of paper, pen if you want to note down. However, the count is under 20. So if you have your fingers towards this, that, you will be able to manage. Ready? So let me begin. Oops. I know what has happened. You copied the PPT, but the video didn't come through. No, the video didn't come through. Don't matter. We'll do something else. We'll improvise. There was supposed to be a video supposed to play. It's not playing right now. If you have time in the end, I will do it in the end. Doesn't matter. We will not do it right now because it will take a lot more. You have that, is with me? We'll put it in later, and later we'll do it when we have time. But we'll do another exercise quickly to overcome for this. We'll do another one. For that, I need 2 volunteers. So, a volunteer from this row. You can sit down. Just raise your hand if you're a volunteer. I need a lady from that row. That's good. That's good, ma'am. What's your name, ma'am?
Muskan.
Can we have a mic for both of them? You have one more mic in the back? Sorry, can you say your name again, ma'am?
Muskan.
Muskan. And yours is? Ankur. So here is what we have to do. Ankur, sit down. The mic is coming to you. What I want you to do is to read the first row of words written on top. Listen to me. Very slowly, very deliberately, so the rest of us can hear. Are you with me so far? Yeah? Muskan, you have to start reading the second line. When you are finished with the second line, he'll read the third, fourth, fifth, and we end with you. Rest of us, what do we have to do? We have to pay very careful attention to see who spoke which word. Because after this test is done, after this reading is done, I'm going to pick out 1 or 2 words and ask you who said which word. And that's precisely the reason why I chose a masculine voice sitting in the front, a feminine voice sitting in the back. So you even have spatial sort of clues to it. Ready? Okay, Ankur, you start. Slowly, deliberately, so that I can hear you. Go ahead.
Candy, sour, sugar.
Bitter, good, taste.
Slow. You're going too fast. Can you repeat again?
Candy, sour, sugar.
Bitter, good, taste.
Tooth, nice, honey.
Soda, chocolate, heart.
Cake, eat, pie.
Alright. Now we'll start with the test. So the first word, let's take taste. How many of you believe Muskan said the word taste? Raise your hands. Okay, let me count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Muskan is also not raising, by the way. So she is not sure. So about 8, 9 people. Okay? And how many thought Ankur said the word sweet? Raise your hands. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Ankur bhi haath nahi utha raha वैसे. ऐसा करके, not sure whether I said it or not. Doesn't matter. About 15 odd people I can make out. Okay? Let's go to the second word. How many of you thought Ankur, masculine voice coming from the front, was the word sweet? Raise your hands. Okay? Raise your hands. Pura yaar. Half, not half. Sweet. Second word, sweet. Did Ankur say it or did Muskan say it? I am asking now for Ankur. If you believed Ankur said it, raise your hands. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. How many of you thought Muskan said the word sweet? Raise your hands. Wow, look at that. Look around you. Look around. You actually have more hands raised for a word that was not there on the slide. Sweet is not there on the slide. And yet more people raise their hands for a word called sweet than the word called taste, which was there on the slide. You may be laughing at it, but you'll seal people's careers, seal people's life. मैंने अपने कानों से सुना था मैंने, right? So this exercise I usually begin with to constantly remind us that our radars, our horizons, the navigation dashboard with which we run our lives, we run other people's life, in your cases, run other people's lives also, is very flawed. In one slide to another slide, within 10 seconds, you forgot that the word sweet was mota mota sweet hai. Again, mota mota sweet hai. हालांकि उसमें bitter भी है, sour भी है, teeth भी है, there are other words also, but mota mota, the gist was sweet. And we take a decision based on that. That's how flawed our radars are. Now let's get back to the storytelling that I wanted to begin with. Man is a story-seeking creature. There is no other way to explain why human beings all over the world would look at the skies and suddenly see a Saptarishi, a great bear, Orion. There is no bloody great bear there. Does it look like a great bear by any? Does it look like a plow? Does it look like... We frame stories. Where we can't see stories, we create stories. And why does that happen? Why is storytelling such an essential part of our DNA? I'm not talking about our professions. I'm not talking about all of us in our professions need to sell. Lawyers need to sell their cases. People need to sell, leaders need to sell themselves to the employees. Army officers need to sell the idea of taking men into battle without ESOP, pay hike, employee of the month, incentives, nothing. We have to take men into certain death at times with no material incentive. All of this happens only by storytelling, and I'll show you the power of storytelling first. This, as I was just telling Judge Saab, is a part of a three-part module workshop that I do. I'm today just going to cover one because of the time that we have. And in this one module, we'll cover the importance of storytelling and the underlying structure of storytelling. So 500 years ago, Plato said this. What did he say? Ovira. Again. 500 years later, Ovira. That's the power of storytelling. Those who tell stories will actually rule the world. And there is a reason for it. This was a question that was asked of 3,000 random people in London city. They were asked, which of these two would you trust more? Who would you trust more? And you know who these two are, right? And guess who won? J.K. Rowling's The Storyteller was more identifiable to the people because they believe they know her much, much better through Harry Potter's stories. She's the one who told us the stories. It's her stories that we tell. They trust her more. Although all the stories she tells are all make-believe stories. None of it is. She's not a regular journalist who's writing a story. She is a make-believe fiction writer, but more people. But this is not the fascinating thing. What I found fascinating in my research was that there were 2,000 companies whose boards, this is a Harvard review by the way, Harvard research, they asked the boards of 2,000 different companies that what do you value in your CEO as the number one quality? Do you know what came at number one? Communication. Not very surprising. Because after all, this session is about communication and all of that. Do you know what came number two? You'll be shocked. Boards actually preferred a person who can communicate better, even if his or her integrity is low. So integrity came at number 2 position and communication came at number 1. This is the boards of companies that we are talking about. And most importantly, we will now talk about why stories are so powerful. Why is storytelling so powerful? So the first aspect is stories are the ones that actually create a shared reality. After all, what is the Delhi High Court? What is the Delhi High Court? Is it a bunch of judges and lawyers? Is it the building? If we took all the lawyers, all the judges from this building and moved them to Haryana, will they become Delhi High Court? What is Mahindra as a company? Is it the brand? Is it the vehicles? If tomorrow, let's say, JLR bought over Mahindra, will they become we suddenly realize that whether it is men charging up a peak to defend a country they have no idea about. They don't even know what a country is. A boy who comes from Kerala has never seen the snow. Boy who comes from Rajasthan doesn't know what the jungles look like. They have no vision of what this. If they have to lay down their lives, or as you saw during the pandemic, some of you might remember, just happened 3-4 years ago, where complete strangers were burning dead bodies, cremating complete strangers, taking a risk to their own life. This all comes with what is called a shared reality. We belong to this one entity. We are part of Delhi High Court. If I suddenly say, yeah, Lucknow ke yaar sare lawyer bevkoof hote hain, suddenly the people from Lucknow will immediately get supercharged. Why? It's the shared reality. Because there is a narrative that is running and I am in that narrative. So if you ever want to build an inspiring shared reality, it cannot be done with statistics and numbers and we have got more lawyers than anyone else and we do so many cases per year and that doesn't inspire people. Statistics never inspires people. Stories inspire people because they create a shared reality. The second aspect is stories are a great mechanism for teaching. How many science students in this class, in the auditorium, who studied science? Okay, who can come and explain the Archimedes principle? Oh, by the way, for the rest of you who didn't study science, it was taught in class 8. Just in case you are thinking, मैं science नहीं पढ़ा, तो 8वीं में पढ़ाया था. People who studied Archimedes principle in school, many of them who studied in college, will struggle to explain the Archimedes principle. How many of you remember this story? So you forgot what your teacher taught you in a structured manner, but you remember what your grandmother narrated to you as a story when you were a kid. This is the Archimedes principle, right? So if you want to pack knowledge, one of the best ways to pack knowledge is through stories. And by the way, this is nothing new. This is why Purushottam Ram. Why is Ram supposed to be Purushottam? He will listen to his dad, listen to his mom. Even if they give wonky orders, he will follow them. He will do exactly what he's asked to do. If somebody suspects his wife and says, your wife is, he'll follow them. The Purushottam. Mythology is nothing but manuals that are being written for the next generation. This is an ideal man. This is an ideal wife. This is a man of the world. This is a good man. This is a bad man. This is nothing but narratives that are being set to teach the next generation. So stories are also a very, very powerful tool for teaching. But the most important use of stories, I think, especially for this community, is to really understand the why. Ye karta kyun hai? Why does he do it? Do you recognize this man? Who is he? Shakuni Mama. How did you identify him? मैंने नाम तो कहीं लिखा नहीं. हाँ, हाथ में उसके बाद डाइस है. What else? Eye is blinded. Looks like a bloody villain, doesn't he? देखने में लगता है साला ये चोर है. जरूर इसने कुछ गड़बड़ किया. शक्ल से लगता. Who knows Shakuni's backstory? Anybody? Okay, we have 1, 2, 3. So you can add on to the details that we have. So Shakuni is a small boy when the story begins. He is the son of the king of Afghanistan, whose name is Shambhal. Shambhal has a sister whose name is Gandhari, the most beautiful woman in the world. And Dhritarashtra, who is a blind and an impotent king, wants to marry the most beautiful woman in the world. Figures. So he first sends an envoy and asks for a hand, and of course Shambhal, being a good brother, tells him to take a walk. Says, "Buddy, my sister, most beautiful woman, there is our own karai." But of course, Dhritarashtra has got the undefeatable Bhishma in his army. So he sends Bhishma. Bhishma captures the entire of Afghanistan, captures them all, brings them to India. And by the way, Gandhari is forcibly married to Dhritarashtra. It's one of those 7 marriages which is allowed by Manusmriti, including kidnapping and marrying with Prithviraj Chauhan does several other people. So she is forcibly married. And that story that we heard in Amarchitra Katha, that she voluntarily ties her patti in her eye, is actually false. Because Gandhari suffers from the phobia of darkness. She cannot even go to sleep unless there is a lamp that is lit in her room. So you have to visualize a man, a boy, whose family has been defeated. His aunt has been forcibly married and subjected to the biggest phobia of her life for the rest of her life. Now, like in India, we have this concept called Mandaliks. in which, again, it affects only women for some strange reason. So those of you who don't know, Manglik is supposed to be a woman who is born under an inauspicious star. So normally in India, we marry them first to a goat, first to a tree, and then the tree is cut, and then they are married to their next husband. So that first husband, Panoti, Shunoti, whatever is gone. In Afghanistan, they do it with goats. So Dhritarashtra actually discovers that Gandhari is actually from one of those categories, and that rage, he's enraged that I've been cheated and married to a widow. He orders the entire clan to be killed. And because he's an extremely cruel king, by the way, this phrase actually comes from him. He doesn't give a flying fish what is happening in his kingdom. He doesn't give a damn his own daughter-in-law is being stripped in front of him. He doesn't care about anybody except himself. So in his anger, he orders that the entire clan of Gandhari will be executed by slow starvation. Not by starvation, by slow starvation, which means they will get one nivala of food every day so that their agony is prolonged. At this point, Shambhal calls the entire clan into his dungeon and he says that one of us must survive to take revenge. One of us must survive. Can't be the strongest one because I was the strongest one and look what happened to me. It has to be the most cunning one, and so he devises a test inside the prison. And he says anybody who can thread a grain of rice, who can pass a thread through a grain of rice, that person will be the one we'll select to. And Shakuni manages to do that. I'll tell you how he does it in the end. Now I want you to visualize this, that there is a 6-year-old boy who is inside a dungeon, and in that dungeon he sees one by one, every one of his brothers, sisters, cousins, siblings die of starvation. I want you to visualize the state of mind when the jailer comes and gives each one a nivala. People take that nivala, put it in their mouth, they can feel that acid of their stomach burning. And when the jailer goes away, they take it out of their mouth and they feed the skin. And one by one, each one of them dies until only Shambhal and Shakuni are left alive. By this time, Gandhari manages to convince Dhritarashtra that at least leave one male member alive, ताकि वंश का नाश ना हो. And Dhritarashtra relents. He says, "Zara Shambhal को तो छोड़ूंगा नहीं, but ये लड़के को छोड़ देता हूँ. He'll become the next king of Kandahar." So the last night that the father and the son are spending together, where the father is going to be executed the next day, and Shakuni is going to be sent as the king of, or the prince of Kandahar. They are having the last conversation, and the father is telling his son that all of us have died to make sure that you are alive. You will need to remember what is the core purpose why we have kept you alive. You cannot forget that. But you are a small boy now. So the moment you will go to Kandahar, there will be this everybody, Shan Ashoka, this, that, all that, entertainment and king. ये सब भूल जाएगा. He said, "No, I'll remember. मैं कहता ये तू बोल रहा है अभी तू बच्चा है. अभी तू बोल रहा है सब, लेकिन actually जब होगा ये सब तू भूल जाएगा. And therefore I need to do something to you, so that you will remember what is the real purpose of your life, every step that you will take in your life." And it's the father, Shambhal, who puts his son on that stone bed and breaks his legs, turns him into a cripple, blinds one eye, disfigures him, so that the boy will always remember what his real purpose is. Now we come back to that story of how he thread that grain of rice. So Shakuni takes a grain of rice and plugs a hole in the dungeon through which ants come in. And it's the ants which bore a hole through the grain of rice. Ironically, Shakuni has nothing against the Pandavas. Nothing at all against the Pandavas. No enmity against the Pandavas. Matter of fact, in the Amar Chitra Katha version, we read that he is the one who plans the Lac Palace to get them burned. But in the detailed version, you find out that he is also the one who warns Vidur that they are going to be. He is actually just trying to stoke up the enmity between them. He is using the Pandavas exactly as he used the ants to bore a hole through the Kauravas who destroyed his family. Now that you know Shakuni's backstory, do you still think he is a villain? In 5 minutes of rendition of the villain who you thought was a villain till whatever number of years we have lived, the epitome of a villain, in 5 minutes of his backstory we have changed our mind about him. And we think of him very differently. I genuinely believe that if we know the backstory of any individual down to this core, there is no way we cannot justify what he did. We may not agree with it. We may not agree with it, but there is no way you cannot empathize कि हाँ यार ये मैं मेरे साथ भी अगर ये होता है ये इसको मार दिया उसको मार दिया ये कर दिया वो कर दिया यहाँ से उधर पटका वहाँ से इधर पटका. After all that, if this chap did it, well, there is a backstory there, and I think this is one of the most powerful reasons why. I mean, I'm asking a question to the youngsters sitting in the back, most juniors sitting in the back. How many of you know the backstories of your seniors this well? Ah, that's why you think they're Shakunis. Good. Now let's talk about the architecture of a story. What is the architecture of a story? So, of course, there are many, many different architectures. I am going to talk about one of the most popular ones because this is one of the first frameworks that is learned when you are learning storytelling as an architecture. We all know how to do storytelling because we've been taught by our parents, we have been doing storytelling all our lives. You are in many ways in a profession that is paid for telling a story. But let's talk about what is the architecture of a good story, and what I'm doing is using an example. This is, how many of you have seen the movie Lion King? Raise your hands please. I use this movie because this is a very popular movie. Even our generation of people, I'm 59, I remember seeing the first version of it. There are two versions of it. I remember seeing the first version with my kids. This movie, by the way, was one of the first animation movies which became an animation movie for adults also. Until then, animation movies was Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, you know, those kind of movies, Pinocchio and all meant for kids. This was the first film in which it was meant for an adult audience also. Now, those of you seen the movie, raise your hands once again. Okay, for those of you who haven't seen the movie, I'm going to tell you the story. The story begins with this. He is the hero, this small lion here, the cub. His name is Simba. The father's name is Mufasa. They are living in a peaceful, happy world. And in this world, there is Mufasa's brother, or Simba's uncle, whose name is Scar. And as you can make out, how does he look? What does he look like? Looks like Shakuni. Huh? Looks evil. Right? So he plots and plans because he wants to be the king. And what he does is, he's plotting and planning in the back. These three, the Simba and his friends, they are Nala and they are having a great time. And in the middle of all this, Scar plays this game where he creates a stampede. And in that stampede, he pushes Simba. Then he asks Simba's father Mufasa that your son is in danger. Mufasa jumps into the stampede trying to save his son. His son is saved, but Mufasa dies. And Scar convinces Simba that you are the cause of your father's death, and he sends him away from that land into another land where he tries to get him killed. He doesn't die. But Simba goes to the other land, and in that other land he meets other friends. He meets those friends, meets his mentors, Rafiki, and then his father comes as a ghost. Mufasa comes as a ghost and tells his son that it was your uncle who killed me. Right? And then Simba returns to the Pride Lands, confronts Scar there, kills Scar, and the story is over. How many of you have seen the movie Lion King? Raise your hands again. How many of you read the book Lion King? Have you read the book Lion King? So every person sitting in this room has not only read the book, you have studied it. It was called Hamlet. If you look at Hamlet's story, matter of fact, if you go to Disney Studios, click on Lion King, the first line on the website says, this is a frame by frame adaptation of Hamlet. They just changed the figures into lions and foxes and wolves, and the structure disappeared. Because all great stories have the same 10 elements, which I'm going to put in the next slide. But I'm going to show you the power of this structure by inviting you to actually construct all those 10 elements. So let's begin. In every story, there should be at least one protagonist. I like the word. I didn't like the word hero, because it can be a heroine also. It can be a dog. It can be a whale. It can be whatever. There has to be a protagonist. If there's a protagonist, there has to be and there has to be this world where the story begins. And I'll explain why there has to be this world. Then the fourth thing is the protagonist and the antagonist have to have a first clash. And who should lose in the first clash? The hero, the protagonist. The hero wins the picture, right? And then the hero has to leave this land and go to another land. Ram has to go to Banbas. Pandavas have to go to Banbas. Luke Skywalker has to go to another planet. Simba has to go to another part of the jungle. He has to leave this world and go to another world. And in that world, he will meet mentors. He will meet teachers. He will meet experiences. He will grow through those experiences, undergo those experiences, undergo those changes. You know, one of the funny things is, I genuinely believe in our education system, we don't teach the importance of Banbas in both the Ramayana and the Mahabharata. Because it's only in Banbas that the strongest man in the world, Bhim, realizes he can't lift a monkey's tail. The most virile and handsome, sought after, young, youth, Arjun, is compelled to live disguised as a woman. A queen who had 5 kings to protect her has to serve as a dasi and take liquor inside a drunk man's room. And when she protests to her malkin, she says, this is your job. It's only the Banbas that teaches us the other end of the story. So you realize that all great stories have exactly the same 10 elements. There will be a hero, there will be a villain, there will be this world, an extraordinary world, first clash. He'll go to the other world, meet his mentor, develop skills, come back as a changed person, because every great story must have the transformation of the protagonist. If the protagonist does not transform through their struggles, then the story really doesn't have much value. I'll show this to you with a couple of stories that you are aware about. Why do we love this structure? Do you recognize these two people from the younger? Who is this? Henry. And who's that? Also playing which characters? Hey, they know. They've been watching movies. They have a lot of time. Just kidding. Movies are a great source of education and inspiration. They both played these two superheroes, Superman and Spider-Man. But I want to tell you something very interesting. Between these two superheroes, as per CV, who is the better superhero? As per CV. कोई शक ही नहीं है. Resume देखो. सुपरमैन का उड़ सकता है, ये तोड़ सकता है, खड़ा कर सकता है, ड्रिव कर सकता है, ऊपर जा सकता है, नीचे जा. You look through clothes. I mean, there is no power that he doesn't have. But Spider-Man, what's his power? He can basically swing from one place to another, and he's got the strength of a Spider-Man. But this is the real power of Superman and Spider-Man. Take a look. These two franchises were launched in 1978 and 2002. And this is their performance in the box office. With half the number of films, Spider-Man has made 2 times the money than Superman. But JD के हिसाब से, CV के हिसाब से, Superman is a better hero. This guy is a smaller hero. Doesn't make sense. Why? Why? You connect with this superhero. You connect with a Spider-Man. You're screwed up like Spider-Man. Spider-Man causes his own uncle's death because he's petty, because he's selfish, because he's cheap, because he's afraid, because he's fearful, because he deviates from his moral stance. He's weak. He is human. He is you. He is me. This other bugger doesn't even come from this planet. Superman is not even from this planet. He is from another planet. How can I identify with him? If I have to bring an inspirational speaker to a bunch of students, I'd much rather bring a young entrepreneur who's made about 200-300 crores than bring a Mukesh Bhai or a Gautam Adani. Why? So those youngsters cannot relate with Superman here. There is no relation with Superman. But with somebody who you can identify with, someone who's flawed. You know, one of the first things they teach us in the army is that troops are not looking for the perfect leader. They are never looking for the perfect leader. And troops actually love leaders with flaws. Good old days, if you went to my unit and asked my troops about me, they'll say, "Hamara sahab to thoda rangila hai." अब है रंगीला. They like officers with flaws. They like leaders with flaws because they know they're human beings. They don't like people who are मैं इधर भी ठीक हूँ, उधर भी ठीक हूँ, ये भी फन्ने खा हूँ. Because they know that those people don't exist, they are fakes. And let me show this to you with an example. So anyway, I'm showing you a lot of numbers here, but basically point taken. Let me show you when these 10 ingredients are not present in the exact combination that they're required to be, then that movie or that story will fall flat on its head. And here is a great example. How many of you seen this movie LOC? Figures, that's why it flopped. This movie was released 2 years after Kargil. When the fervor, the bloody nationhood, patriotism was at its peak. That's when this movie came out. This movie had every hero and his brother and every heroine and her sister. I mean, look at the star cast. And the movie bombed. You can't say JP Datta को picture बनानी नहीं आती लड़ाई के ऊपर. Why can't you say that? Border बनाया था super duper hit. Again, 3-4 years before LOC. You can't say country was not ready for a war movie. Kargil had just happened. Why did this movie flop? It flopped. Here is the flop. Why did it flop? I want somebody who's seen the movie to answer it. Please, sir. Please. They could not connect. Okay, that could be one reason, but it's a war movie. So, border had been made before that. Okay?
There were too many heroes and too many stories bunched together in one.
Thought so, but that's not the reason. Jani Dushman had 9 heroes and multiple lines of stories, super duper hit. Satya Pe Satta, Magnificent 7, Crash, multiple storylines. They do well. Yeah.
I've not seen the movie, but I can connect with what you just said before that the essential ingredients were not present.
I asked him the question itself. Now you're playing back the question to me. I said essential ingredient is not there. I want to know which ingredient, which is why I asked people who have seen the movie. Yeah.
I haven't seen the movie, but I'm Bollywood buff. Maybe there was no immediate masala.
There was lots of masala. Oh, you name it. Masala, Kareena Kapoor. You look at the heroine cast, item number. Kya baat kar rahe madam aap? By the way, I have to tell you something. You will not believe this. You will not believe this. You know who this guy is? नागार्जुना. इस पिक्चर में इतने हीरो हीरोइन थे. नागार्जुना only the southern people will know. Nagarjuna big guy in south. They removed Nagarjuna completely from the movie because movie was becoming 3 hours long. तो सुपरस्टार साउथ का सुपरस्टार उसका पोर्शन ही हटा दिया उन्होंने. इतने हीरो थे. This movie flopped and it failed because there was no Gabbar Singh. There was no Mogambo. There was no dragon to kill. In the end, if you remember, the last scene when all these heroes reach on top, what do they find there? Some 20-30 security guards, overweight kind of guys standing there. And the audience is going, isko marne ke liye to yaar ek Saif Ali Khan akela kafi hai. तूने इतनी बड़ी फौज इकट्ठा करी, वहां लेके गया, वहां तो कोई नहीं. In the Air Force, we have a saying that to make a great plane, you need a great enemy. Without a great enemy, you cannot make a great plane. Similarly, I think if we have to galvanize the undiscovered energy in people, we have to create a dragon to kill. If we say, well, whatever we did last year, we'll do 10% more than that, it's not going to happen. When a man says we'll put someone on the moon with material that has not yet been discovered, by propellants not yet been discovered, by metals that have not yet been discovered, then it feels, yaar, ye koi takkar wala kaam hai. But when you take 24 heroes to sort out one security guy, even the audience has sympathy with the security guy rather than the 12 heroes. The last couple of things I want to talk to you about is a couple of examples. Storytelling has 2 parts to it. The first part is how do you craft a story. By the way, the story is all around us. As I told you, we can use stories for education, we can use stories for feedback, we can use stories for... I often use a very powerful metaphor for feedback to my team members. How many of you are interested in cricket here? I am personally not interested, but this was told to me by a friend of mine, that when Kambli and Sachin Tendulkar, they came into the game, Kambli was superior to Sachin in every format of the game. Whether it's a 1 day, 20-20, 50-50, whatever it is, he was superior. And yet what would happen is, Sachin would arrive at the practice always half an hour before, and Kambli would come just when the practice is ending, always in the end. Many times when I'm giving a feedback to a star performer of mine, I just tell them this story and tell them, "Baki teri marzi hai, tumhe Kambli banna hai ki Tendulkar." Because a lot of stars actually take privileges because they are stars. I used to be a star salesperson, so I'll never fill in my timesheets. 40% of the order book is with me. CEO can't afford to fire me. So when we want to give feedback also, we can use stories because it's not personal. You're not saying you are coming late. You're saying one guy came late, one guy used to come half an hour ago, the one guy who used to come half an hour ago is a legend. Other fellow Kambli you still have to, some of you may not even recollect who Kambli is. So it's a great way of giving feedback. But the more important part is, how do you craft a story? I'm going to skip this one. This is slightly longer one. We are running short of time. But I'll tell you this story. And this is a story of how you can use stories to embed cultures in your organization. Similar, Purushottam Ram, how do you define? This is a fascinating story which happened in Mahindra about 25 years, 25 years ago, 22 years ago, when the Scorpio was being launched. Some of you might remember that when the Scorpio was launched, it took the market by a storm. There was a waiting list for months together. Because until then, there were only two SUVs, for those of youngsters don't know here. One was Tata Safari and the other was Toyota Qualis. One looked like a truck, the other one looked like a funeral van. So when the Scorpio came, it was like a wow, it was amazing. But we got a lot of feedback from our customers that the spare tire, the fifth tire, Stepney as we call it, which is under the chassis of the Scorpio, it should be here in the back. It looks much more macho. You know? बात अलग है कि वो जाएगा यहाँ से लेके कनॉट प्लेस तक, लेकिन लगना ऐसा चाहिए कि मतलब फावड़ा साइड में जो लेह लद्दाख जा रहा है, जेरिकन ये वो, you know, wow, macho men are. Just spoke Dhritarashtra. So, lot of feedback came that we want this in the back. Now the tire of an SUV should actually be under the chassis, and there are two reasons for it. Engineering, especially short body SUV. One is it keeps the center of gravity low, and the other is in case of a crash, if you have a weight in the front and weight in the back, then the vehicle will go into a torque. So this is the right place to keep the tires. But our engineers came up with a design. What they did was they kept the tire under the SUV only, but they put a drum behind it, you know, a wheel drum, which had storage space and all of that stuff. By this time, the late Mr. Keshav Mahindra had already demitted command. He was no longer chairman, like hands-on, he was chairman emeritus. But still a design change, logo change would go to him. And he vetoed it. He said no. And we were surprised. I was a young CEO that time. I was the CEO of this company called First Choice. There were about 10, 12 CEOs. We were surprised. This is one of the rare occasions where we as a manufacturer have managed to solve the customer's ask without compromising safety. And the old man is vetoing it. And then he called 10, 15 of we are young CEOs, called us to his room. And he explained to us why he vetoed it. He said, Mahindra will never stand for something on the outside and something else in the inside. Agar dabba hai, to tire hoga, or tire nahi hai, to dabba bhi nahi hoga. Now there's one story which we narrate to every successive generation. All the core values, ye values, wo values, integrity, customer first, wife second. वो सब बताने की जरूरत नहीं है. Because once you tell this story, the north, the compass, the moral compass of the organization is embedded in the story. Mahindra can never do what you see on the outside, what you see on the inside. Even if the customer asks, "Sir, thoda invoice kam karke do, boss humse nahi hoga." What you see is what you get. Once you tell this story, the lesson lingers on in the organization. If you really want to imbibe a culture, whatever it may be, in our house, in a small team, in an organization, you cannot do it by sending memos and putting standees with points in it. Nobody reads those, but everyone listens to stories. And I can share one after the other, innumerable stories, but the fact is, why is storytelling also very important as a brand? You as a brand. You, the leader, as a brand. I want you to tell the story of this lady. Her name is Radhika Gupta. Some of you have heard about her? Anyone heard about her? You know her? How do you know her?
read about it.
So this, let me tell you a little bit about her. This, she's now about 36, 38. She was one of my students about 5 years ago. And she's actually got a broken neck. The neck is broken. She was daughter of an IFS officer. Father was posted in Pakistan. Mother had complications during the birth. The nurse took her, put her in the ventilator. When she was putting her in the ventilator, she put her in the wrong position and the neck broke and it's ever been broken. She is a CEO in the Edelweiss Asset Management Group, and all this here. She did all this, ended up with a broken neck, which she describes as a weird. This is a Wikipedia page, right? And she's no stranger to talks. She's done several talks. Can you see that? MD, this, that. Got decent views, 10,000 views, about 320 views, 5,000 views, almost 1,000 views. But then she goes and does one talk, the girl with the broken neck. This is the talk you must have seen. By the way, she did it in my platform when I was still with Reliance. You can Google, if some of you can just go to YouTube right now and tell me how many views does this talk have, because the slide over here is an old slide. My sense is it should have crossed at least 500,000 views by now. Yeah. She does a talk on finance, she does a talk on her core competence, on law, on the finer points of law, on the distinction of law, and that gets maybe 1,000 views, 2,000 views, that's it. I'm using law as a metaphor. In her case, she used finance. She talks about a broken neck and how she struggled with it, and her life story and what happened with it. Not only does she get 500,000 views, but this is also what happens. Take a look at this. I didn't know Radhika Gupta until I listened to the Paisa Vaisa podcast, the girl with the broken neck, I'm putting my money in the new US fund tomorrow. Lovely story. I urge you, especially all the women in the audience, I urge you to watch the talk. She has not one line about investment in the talk. Nothing. She talks about how her neck broke, how she almost committed suicide, how she struggled, how life fits it all together. It's a fascinating story. I don't want to tell you that story because she should tell it. But here's the interesting thing. There's a US investor willing to put money in her fund listening to her story, not her brochure, not her red herring, not her prospectus. And there's another man who is holding her as a role model, not because she is a CEO, not because she's become a CEO at the age of 33, 34, but because she has the courage to stand on stage and say, I've got a broken neck, deal with it. That's the power of storytelling in creating an individual's brand. And I think in whatever profession we are in, including your own, building of your personal brand is your responsibility. Because after all, at the end of the day, in any form of advocacy, the word advocacy comes from your profession. And in any form of advocacy, the brand of the advocate, I'm saying in a broader sense, the advocate is equally important as the message. Because I often tell smokers that let's say you're smoking one day and you start coughing too much, you go to a doctor, he says, hey, bada mota mamla hai, lung specialist ke paas jana padega, go to a lung specialist, he does some MRI, this thing, that thing, and he shows you an X-ray or he shows a patch and he says, you better stop smoking. And he charges you 10,000 rupees for it. Says so in the packet. This knowledge is there in the packet also. Now my question to people is, did this doctor con the patient? The answer is if he quit smoking, then he didn't con the patient. Because it's not about the message, it's about the advocacy of the message. The message is there in every packet. He'll cause cancer, ye ho jayega, marega tu ye, wo photo bhi laga ke rakha hua hai. But the process of delivering that message to its final completion, which means the message must find its meaning and meaning must translate into action. That is the full path, and there you require brand. Without brand, it's not going to happen. Or it will happen, but you will be fighting a handicapped battle. And the best way to build a brand is to tell your own broken neck story. By the way, if you Google Radhika Gupta now, you will find she's come on innumerable platforms. After this talk, she went to Josh Talks, then she appeared in the Ranbir Al-Badia show. She came on Shark Tank. She was invited by the government to participate in 2 committees. One was for empowering women, the other was of the disability committee. It all started with this one talk that she did. And by the way, this talk is not scripted, it doesn't have any rocket science stories. If you will go through the talk, you will realize it is just her life story fitted into that architecture. Everything is okay, something goes wrong, then she goes to another place, learns the lessons over there, comes back, uses those lessons to revive her life, and now she's a transformed person. It's exactly the same architecture. And if you now go to her Wikipedia page, there is a new line that has been added over there, and that line says she is also known as the girl with the broken neck. And interestingly, a doctor from the US wrote to her, कि मैं तेरा neck ठीक करता हूँ. So I told her, ये तेरे brand पे अपना brand बना रहा है. I am the guy who fixed the neck of the girl with the broken neck, right? So with that, I come to the end of my session. Like I told you, it might seem a little truncated because it was part of a 3-part module. In this module, I wanted to emphasize on the importance of storytelling. I wanted to share with you architecture of the story and also show you with wireframe on that architecture why some stories succeed really well. Got nothing to do with the hero. We just showed that. We showed the biggest superhero of this planet actually fails miserably in front of a minor superhero. We also saw that how storytelling has its uses not just in leadership, but in creating a culture, creating an environment, creating an ambience that you would want around you. And in the end, we spoke about how, if you worked on it yourself, you will have the story architecture. Hopefully on another occasion, I'll do another session on how do you deliver a great story? How do you tell a great story, which will usually have most of the audience listening to you and not checking their phone or doing something else like it was over here. Thank you once again. Thank you very much.
Sir, it was such a captivating session. Your aura, your personality, your confidence, everything filled this room with zeal. I would request everyone to kindly stand up for the national anthem.